Hey guys, this is Sharad with Recently, host of the Recently podcast, bringing you another very special guest, Justin Campbell, on this podcast. Justin, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Sharad, I'm awesome, man. Thanks for the honor.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you live? What kind of investing do you do? How long have you been investing for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm coming from Great Falls, Montana. We're just about 100 miles west of the dead center of the state. So beautiful this time of year. Asked me 6 months ago, not so beautiful.
Yeah.
So Great Falls, Montana, invest in long-term holds. We've got some short-term. We own a property management company, handyman company. Obviously, we flip houses also. So lots in the real estate world.
How long have you been investing for?
Yeah, so we've been investing full time for about 3 years. So
Okay.
this is a second career for me, but 3 years into the full dive.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, tell me, like, I'm always curious, how did you get started in real estate? What were you doing before and what did the transition to real estate look like for you?
Yeah, it looked like a sharp right turn for us. We were pastors for 16 years, full time, and after that season ended, we had pastored a church in Boston and also in LA, so coast to coast. And after that season ended, we moved back to Montana, which is where I'm from. I did not have a resume that would really give me opportunities to have a job that would provide for my family. So we thought we would try real estate investing. We had about 6 months of emergency funds saved up and thought, well, we're going to give this a shot and see how it goes. If we can make it happen within 6 months, that'd be fantastic. But if not, then I'm going to go job hunting. And so we
Oh,
started
wow.
in real estate really out of necessity. Like there are not a lot of other opportunities for
Did
us.
you always have a little bit of inkling towards real estate, or is that something like once you moved to Montana, like, okay, let's figure out, I don't have a resume, like, how do I start making money and start providing for the family?
Yeah, I mean, so as a full-time pastor, we didn't have a lot of time to invest in other ways, our energies in other ways. But my dad and mom had bought rental properties, so I was familiar with it. But really, I mean, when we moved up here, I read some books, listened to some podcasts, and decided, yeah, I think I can do that, and just
Wow.
went full send.
That is incredible. So you have 6 months of emergency funds when you moved to
Yep.
Montana.
Yep.
I'm really curious, like in that back against the wall, like what's your mindset? You're like, okay, I have 6 months. What do you do next? Like, how do you go about, like you've been doing it for full time 3 years, but how do you go about starting a real estate investing business?
Yeah, I mean, as far as mindset, you probably understand, and probably most of your listeners would understand when you're in that kind of situation, you're battling fear and insecurity with hope and faith. Especially my wife, she had a lot of financial insecurity. And truthfully, I think that financial insecurity could rob a lot of people out of their best decisions. And I think that was the threat that we were facing is, if we're going to live in that space of insecurity, then I think the outcomes are going to follow that kind of mindset. And I remember my wife had this kind of definitive moment where she was like, I recognize that I'm full of fear right now. And she's a phenomenal lady. So she recognized that. And she really trusted or chose to trust that we're in the season of what could be insecurity, but I'm going to choose to trust God that He's going to provide. And honestly, it was huge for both of us, this idea that we serve a God of abundance and not scarcity. And so that we could step out in faith, knowing that, from our perspective, our background, man, God is going to take care of us. And it was so cool because she decided in that moment to solidify that action. We were going to give a bunch of the money that we had saved away. And it almost became like this declaration of faith that we refuse to be held by, fear or insecurity. And so I think once we decided to give money away, we're like, this is it. We're going to make this happen. There's no
Wow.
other out. And so
That's
we
in
moved. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna that's incredible just to like have the faith and mindset to just like, all right, I'm gonna put faith in it and God's gonna take care of it. That's so inspiring.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so we moved up in June 2021 and we had our first flip under contract in July of 2021. I ended up doing a lot of the work myself. My parents helped, my oldest son helped. I hired some family, and I learned a ton, mostly developing a process for rehabbing homes, especially homes with foundation issues, which is a huge issue in our area. Learned never do electrical myself. That's a terrible idea.
Right. How did you
Yeah.
go about, so once you made a decision, okay, I'm going to go into real estate, flipping is not the easiest niche in real estate to start with. Like wholesaling, you could get a contract and assign it. That's a little bit different from like actually buying a property. Like you're putting money into it. Now you cannot go back. With a wholesale contract, you can go back, you can walk away from it. How did you run your numbers? Like, where did you get the confidence of like, this is making sense? The numbers make sense. Like, how did you go about that? Did you have a partner? Were you going to local RIA meetings, talking to other investors to make sure that, I mean, it was like this is July 2021, in the middle of the COVID,
Mhm.
very competitive market. How do you get the confidence to move forward with it?
I've always kind of had the mindset where if you're 80% certain something's going to work, you just go for it. I mean, you're never going to be 100% confident in the decision. I mean, truthfully, I had read a couple of books, I'd listened to a bunch of podcasts, and I think you eventually get this critical mass of information where you just like, hey, everybody else is doing it. People are doing this, so why can't I do this? And
Right.
I had the Bigger Pockets calculator, so ran my numbers based off of that, and yeah, 80% certain, and just pulled the trigger.
I love
I would
that.
run my numbers differently now. I don't think
Right.
it's super strong ARV to start with. I didn't run my rehab budget. It was just basically just let's just go for it.
Like best case scenarios and everything.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
love that. I think I talk to so many people on the podcast. I have the fortune of talking to like investors here, like yourself. And I think one thing I noticed, what really separates successful investors from the one that are struggling a little bit is their action taking ability. You
Mhm.
know, I can talk to so many investors like, okay, let's just, like you say, 80% confidence, good enough. Let's just go ahead, take action. We'll figure it out. If mistakes happen, they happen. But at least I don't have the regret of being on the sideline and not making that decision. So I appreciate you sharing that. How did the first deal go? Did you make money on it? Did it, I'm sure you ran into a bunch of issues like the electrical and other things, but did you end up making money on that deal?
Yeah. So we on that first deal, we made about, I think we made $28,000.
Nice.
And I finished that and thought, oh my goodness, I almost just replaced my salary as a pastor.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
we actually, so we finished that one, and a couple weeks later, a realtor that we knew said, "Hey, I would like to sell my house, and are you interested in it?" So we ended up buying that. We flipped that, and it took us 10 days to renovate it, and we made $20,000. And
Wow. And
it
like,
was like,
wow, this is
this is
amazing.
insane.
Yeah. And then, so what happens after that? Like, this is like, second half of 2021, you flipped a couple of
Mhm.
properties, made about roughly 50,000.
Yeah.
Where do you go from there?
We kept networking, and it was interesting because from the very beginning, we would get a flip, we would get all the way done with it, we would sell it, and it was like, I remember having this thought, will we ever get another opportunity to flip another house? We had no
Right.
CRM, we had no pipeline, we were doing, no postcards, nothing. It was just all word of mouth. And so it was always, are we ever going to get this opportunity again? And no joke, like every 2 weeks after we would sell one, we would get another opportunity. And so the first house we flipped was in our neighborhood, and it was such a piece of crap house. And we revitalized it to such an extent that that first house really kind of gave us a reputation in the area. So neighbors told us about this third house that we flipped. I found the sellers on Facebook, contacted them, made them an offer, they accepted it, and we did that one. It took us, 4 or 5 weeks, and I think we made 70 grand off of that one.
Oh
And
my
like,
God.
this is just, and so that's just kind of how it worked. We just
Right.
roll one into the next, and, been intentional with growing our network in the area, our lenders, the banks, title companies, realtors. And so we're just trying to get on everybody's radar. And as we've done that, people just end up sending stuff to us.
So at this point, you guys are doing property management also, right?
Mhm.
How did that happen? Are you guys still flipping, or you guys have kind of transitioned into property management side?
So we're still flipping. I think I think we're on project 10 this year or so. So not huge scale, but I would say we're probably the largest in our area. So as we flipped, we were able to buy more. As we were buying more, people kept asking me to manage their properties. And honestly, for a long time, I said, I don't want to manage anybody else's stuff. This is going to be a distraction to my own goal to generating passive income. I don't want to manage other people's stuff. It was so interesting though, because my wife, she was the one that said, "Hey, I think you're missing an opportunity here." And when I look back on it, it's almost like the distraction that I dismissed was actually the direction that I needed for my own development. Like I didn't know that I needed property management to grow as a leader. I didn't know I needed property management to step into the next phase of my calling.
Talk a little bit about that. Like, how do you see that property management business? I own a property management company. It's a very, very difficult business, at
Mhm.
least in the market that we invest in. It's not like a neighborhood. I'm not sure what neighborhood you're managing. It's a very difficult business. What was that transition like? And looking back, like, what are some of the things or challenges that you ran into as a leader? Like, just
Mhm.
talk about that, please.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as you know, property management, you're dealing with tenants, you're dealing with owners. Property management companies usually have a really bad reputation, so you're kind of fighting an uphill battle, fighting against a reputation that you didn't create in the first place. And so for me as a pastor, like I was in the people business. And when you lead a business with people in mind first, it creates a level of trust that I think you can't gain when you're profit first. And so I tried to really develop relationships, and it was interesting because property management and building some of these other businesses that we've done, my role as a pastor really uniquely positioned me for the opportunity because of my commitment to the last opportunity. And uh,
Right.
and so like building a team, property management, you don't want to be an owner operator. That's a
Yeah,
terrible position to be in.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so building a team, it's way easier to build a team when you can pay them than when you're running a team of volunteers, as like I was as a pastor.
Yeah, I feel like in property man, I was talking to my property manager. I feel like it's one of those businesses where you're serving two parties, the tenants and owners, and they're
Yeah.
both upset with you. I feel like all the time. They're just upset with you. One thing, you're charging too much rent, the other thing, you're not charging enough. There's always that tension. So it's a very interesting business. And then how big is your property management company? How many
We're
units are you
just
guys?
over 300 units now.
300 units? Wow, how did
Yeah.
you scale so quickly to 300 units? And are these residential apartment complexes?
A little mix of both. Yeah. So we don't do we don't do anything like 100 plus where we've got an on-site manager. So I don't think we have anything over 30 units right now. So
Hmm.
and it's just been word of mouth. So we haven't
So
done any
you're not doing
advertising,
any paid advertising, nothing, just
nothing.
referral, word of mouth,
Yeah.
and all in this same area that you're in,
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
right? And then what's your goal like 3 to 5 years down the road? Like kind of are you see yourself scaling your property management business, scaling your flipping business?
Yeah, we want to get out of flipping as soon as possible. So
Why
as
is
soon as
that?
we Yeah, I think as soon as, I mean, taxes are high, liability is high, stress is high with flipping. So I think as soon as we have, flipping is always been designed to help us buy more properties. Once we have the properties that we want, once we have the reserves that we need, I think we'll probably pivot to more of the lending side.
Okay, like lending, private money lending.
That's right.
Okay. When you look back 3 years ago, when you started thinking about investing, and you look back and like how far you've come, like what are some of the things that you look back in terms of like mindset that you needed? Like, okay, I'm glad I had that mindset because a lot of people that listen to the podcast, they're newbie investors. Sometimes they're struggling to get their first deal, and
Mhm.
you've done incredibly well over 3 years, flipping consistently and have 300 units under management looking to do lending. Like what's that like looking back, the mindset that you look back and like, man, I'm so glad that I had that mindset and I did that.
That's a great question. Yeah, I think one of the postures that I've had is I've always assumed I'm not the smartest person in any room. And so I've always tried to invest in my own development and in finding people that are much more successful than I am. Because I believe that you're only successful when you're pulled up. And so having people ahead of you that can pull you up, that can, shortcut the learning curve. And so I invested in coaches and mentors pretty early. That would be certainly one. I think the other one is, and we talked about it just a little bit, is I was absolutely certain that if somebody else has done it, then I can probably do it also.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not the smartest person or the most talented, but most people that are very successful, they've got the same models, they've got the same, whatever it is. And so if you can learn from other people's models, generally speaking, you can have similar results. And so
Yeah,
I think
it's
that's some of what led to the confidence to move forward.
yeah, I think it's right. I mean, I'm so happy to hear that it's about investing in coaches, systems,
Mhm.
and processes. It's like the boring part of the business, right? Nobody thinks about systems and processes until they get to the point where things are falling apart, and and then like they start questioning, okay, why is this happening? Why is that happening? And it's too late sometimes. But if you start investing in systems and processes upfront, it makes the business so much easier.
Yep.
It
Yep.
makes such a big difference.
That's right.
And coaching is one thing that I wish if I could go back, that's one thing I would change is start investing in coaching and
Mm.
mentorship programs a lot earlier in my investing career than I'm doing now. It just helps you with the learning curve. You're learning from other people, from their experiences, picking up on their systems and processes that you
Mhm.
can immediately implement so you don't have to start from scratch. So I'm so happy to hear that you were doing that. And especially like I'm still amazed that you had like 6 months of savings and you had this faith that this thing was going to work out. And I love this such a simple mindset that was so powerful. If other people have done it, why can't I do it?
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing. And how do you see yourself like how have you changed as a leader from the time you started 3 years ago to the time you see now? So I want to, that's part one of the questions. And where do you see the gaps are from where you are right now to, let's say, 3 years ahead? Like, where do you see the leadership gaps are right now
Mm.
that you need to grow?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, probably the way I've developed the most is, I stopped thinking one for one. So I never want to be in the place where if I stop a task, I stop making money for that task. So I want to invest in businesses, in teams, in processes, so that if I step away, the money continues to generate. And so I would say that's definitely the biggest one is,
Can you give me an example of that? Like, what would that look like in your business now?
yeah, yeah. So I mean, if we just take property management for an example, when I was in the owner operator role, I answered the phone. I met with potential owners, and if I didn't do that, we stopped improving and adding unit counts to our property management. But by investing in an operations manager, they continue that process and I can step away from it. So no longer am
Right.
I investing in it just this one for one. I'm investing in a team or in a process. So
I
that
see.
that'd be an example.
Okay. And where you are right now, with the incredible business that you built, and you look ahead like 3, 5 years down the road, where do you see you need to grow as a person, as a leader, in order for your business to get to that point?
Mhm. Probably the biggest thing, and probably for a lot of people that are in kind of my space right now, where we've developed a certain level of wealth and passive income and everything like that. In order to move to that next kind of echelon, I feel like a lot of it is limiting beliefs. Like it just not believing that, yeah, I've never seen it happen before. Not a lot of people are talking about this space. And so it's tough to see myself scaling to having a property management of 5,000 units. It's a completely different beast
Right.
than a property management of 3 to 800. And so
Absolutely.
just the limiting belief of, am I really capable of leading an organization of that size?
And how do you manage that?
Yeah, keep surrounding myself with people that are in that space. I think a lot of it comes down to being certain that I actually want to be in that space, and to run a company that size. I think if you surround yourself with people that are successful, they're just, even if they're not directly mentoring or coaching you, you're just going to rise to the level of the people that you're hanging out with. So, getting in the space of people that have grown companies to that size is probably the biggest, the
Yeah.
biggest action step for me.
Yeah, I think Jim Rohn said it. You're the average of 5 people that you spend the most time with in your
Yeah.
personal life, business life. And that's like so great to hear that from you. I 100% believe that, if in my business, if I'm hanging out with the 5 people that are motivated, like 10 steps ahead of me, they're going to pull me up. Or, I'm just going to be so motivated to get to that point. And
Mhm.
one thing I want to like point out that you mentioned, this is something I struggle with also. I'm working with a business coach. We set a goal of like what I want to do with my company. And he questioned me, like, why do you want that? Like, is
Mhm.
that something you want for yourself, or is that something like a vanity number that you want to be able to prove to other people? Is that
Mhm.
something, you mentioned that you've had this question, like, do I even want to be at that level? Like, how have you like tackled that question for yourself?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to, what do you really want? I don't think anybody really wants to have a large business with all of these employees just for the sake of it. It has to do with, the revenue that you're generating from having that size. And so for my wife and I, we've got some giving goals that we would like to hit on an annual basis. And in order to hit those giving goals, we've got 3 buckets. We need to grow property management to 800 units. We need to have 100 units personally owned, and we need to flip 20 houses a year. Like, having those 3 buckets enables us to generate this amount of income so that we can achieve this giving goal. And so, do we need a property management company of 5,000? We don't. But I'm not certain I don't want that once I hit the 800 mark.
Right. That is so incredible. I love how specific your goals are, right? 800 units. We want to have, flip 20 houses a year, have 100 of our own units. Is that your biggest why in life right now? Is that like everything is driven by, the how much you want to give? Is that like when you get up, I mean, I'm sure everyone has those days where you question like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Like, I could be doing something else. Like, how do you like do you focus on the why behind what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm truthfully, I don't have a lot of those days where I wake up and think, man, I just don't want to do this anymore now that I'm out of the owner operator role. I had those days a lot as the owner
Right.
operator. Uh, but once I'm out of that, since being out of that role, yeah, I don't have a lot of those days. And so it's much more about, am I running businesses that give me a quality of life where I'm able to make an impact on people, give generously, and have a lot of fun. And as long as I'm hitting those 3 buckets, yeah, I don't think having a crystal clear why that's, myopic on this one thing is critical.
Yeah. I love that. Justin, this has been absolutely incredible. I have a couple of other questions to ask you. What
Mhm.
do you do for fun?
Yeah, I love to have fun.
Yeah.
I think one of the benefits of being an only child and growing up having to entertain myself is I have fun everywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love traveling with my wife. I love, playing with my kids, whatever they're into. I love getting out in nature, trail running, backpacking. I play guitar, so try to have
Nice.
fun in a lot of capacities.
Curious, what's the most memorable place you've traveled to?
Ooh,
Place you
one
would
of my
want to go back again, yeah.
yeah, one of my favorite places, and we'd actually like to buy property here, is Kosovo. It's
In Montana?
absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
What?
You said in Montana?
Oh no, Kosovo in Central Europe, so in the
Oh, okay, okay.
Balkans.
Kosovo. Okay, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So it's a mountainous region. It's beautiful. It actually
Nice.
looks a lot like Montana, but you can
Yeah.
you can build a property, a decent property for $50,000 there,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's the cost of living is cheap. The people are great, and beautiful area.
Love that. Right. You said when you started in real estate, you've read, a couple of books, one podcast. What's the one book that you look back and say, wow, this book had the biggest impact on my life? It could be a personal book, it could be a business book, or one of each.
Yeah, as far as growing business, ooh, most of the books are they're so stacked upon each other. Like they're, you read Cash Flow Quadrant and your
Mm,
mind just explodes about this idea of, having passive income,
yeah,
or Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's hard to put a finger on one book that was the most transformative. I would just say I read so many real estate books, and I think
right.
all of them stacked upon
You're
each
right.
other.
Yep.
That's kind of
Yeah, you
way.
learn one thing and you're like, oh, I gotta find out about that. You're like, wow, this book is so good. And you're like,
Yep.
it's like you keep going from one step to another. No, I
Yeah.
appreciate
I,
that.
if I had to pick one book, it would probably be Chad Carson, Coach Carson. Um,
Okay.
he's got a book. One of them's The Small but Mighty Investor. That one's
Okay.
fantastic. The prequel to that, I can't remember what it is, but Chad Carson had a book and it was about financial independence through real estate, and that was
Yeah,
probably that was one of the biggest epiphanies.
absolutely. Yeah. I'll check it out. All right. Final question. If you could spend a day with anyone, dead or alive, who would you want to spend the day with and why?
Hmm. I mean, the obvious answer would probably be Jesus, the historical figure. But if I'm going to pick somebody like modern day, I'd pick Bob Goff. I don't know if you've heard it. He's the
No.
author of Love Does, but man,
Okay.
this guy knows how to have fun, and he
Oh,
invests in
yeah.
his family. I actually have a picture of him in my office just as a reminder to have fun in life.
Awesome. Oh, that is so awesome. I love that. I love that. Justin, if someone wants to connect with you, learn more about your journey, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, probably Instagram. I'm on Instagram at Red Door Properties, and it's just
Perfect.
a period between each word. Red Door Properties. That's a great way to connect with me.
Perfect. We'll put that in the show notes. Justin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your journey. I appreciate it so much.
Sure. Thanks for the great questions and for the conversation.
Thank you.